All right, on this warm-up, we're given this function in standard form and we're supposed to write it in factored form. So we first notice that we can factor out that leading coefficient of -4. So as I do that, it'll be f of x is equal to -4 times the quantity. And then when we factor the -4 out of that, we just are left with an x squared. And then we factor a -4 out of positive 24x, so we get -6x. Now we're still not in factored form because this needs to be factored. And you might be feeling like, I don't know. I know that it's got to look something like this when I factor it, but, whoops, except for that these should be subtract. So it should be x minus p, that quantity, times the quantity x minus q. And so, how do we make that look like that? And the trick is to just factor out the x now. So we have f of x equals -4 times, and I'm just going to put it like this. So when we factor an x out of this, we get x. And when we factor an x out of this, we get subtract 6. And that's pretty much factored form, but we can make it look more like factored form by right there. So we could say f of x is equal to -4 times the quantity x minus 0 times the quantity x minus 6. And that you may like that better because it looks strictly more like the factored form, but this is also just fine for factored form. And if we got rid of those parentheses, that would actually be just fine too. So f of x is equal to -4x times the quantity x minus 6. And you may not feel like that looks like factored form, and that's partly why I'm not going to write it that way with the ink. Morning, Parker. Morning, Everett. Questions on the first function there? Good morning, Griffin and Noah. I don't think I said good morning to you yet. It's good to see you. So we're given that same function and we're supposed to write it in vertex form. And so again, remember that I need to first rewrite it by factoring out that -4. That's our first step. So it's going to be -4 times the quantity x squared minus 6x. And then really, it's +0 here is how we can see that. So our C value there is 0. So I'm going to leave a blank. And I could say +0 here, but I don't need to do that. I can just say, all right, I'm going to make my blanks like that. And I think that once you're to this point, this next step's a little tricky. So stick with me real closely here on this warm up. You're going to need this later today in a problem. So make sure you're tuning in. High intention. So we take that -6 and we divide it by 2 and then we square the result, which will be -3 squared, which will be 9. So here we add 9. Now you might think, oh, then we subtract 9 out here. If it weren't for this -4 out front, that would be true. However, when we add 9 inside the parentheses, we have to remember that we're really multiplying that -4 times the +9. So when we add 9 here, what we're doing to the entire function is subtracting 36. So on the outside, we need to add 36. Is there anyone who needs to see that again? Because that's the key. Thank you, Ian. All right. So I'm going to, up to that point, you should feel okay. Is that true? Okay. So here we know that whatever we put here, this has to relate to it. It has to balance the equation. So when we added this 9, because it's inside these parentheses, and we're multiplying this -4 by everything inside the parentheses, what we really did was we subtracted 36 when we wrote +9 in there. So to balance the equation, we have to add 36. Good that time? Anyone else? Thanks. Yeah. So remember that the way that we know what to put here, thanks, Toli, is whatever this value is right here, we take that, we divide it by 2, and we square the result. Well, -6 divided by 2 is -3. -3 squared is +9, and that's what goes there. Is that good, Tully? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Anyone else up to this point? All right, we need to finish writing it then in vertex form. So we have that -4 out front right there. It's still here. Now we have to rewrite this in factored form. And so it's going to be the quantity x, and then we take this, subtract 3 right here. We can just use that. X minus 3, that quantity is squared. And then we have the plus 36 right here. And now we have rewritten our function in vertex form. So when we factor this, you can use the generic rectangle diamond problem method to get this if you'd like to, if you don't see the straight factoring there. Questions on any part of that? Yeah. So here we had the +9 that came from there, right? And when we added that 9, because it is inside these parentheses, and we're multiplying those parentheses by the -4, -4 times +9 is -36. So to balance that, we have to add 36. Thanks, Evie, for asking. Yeah, totally. Let me talk about that in just a moment, okay? Thanks. Any more questions on the warm up? Do we not have to refactor the -4? Which step do you mean in, Ian? I'm sorry. When we go from to here? No, we have the A value out front of our quantity squared in vertex form. So vertex form is A times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. Thanks for asking. Good question. Anyone else here? Evie, I'm sorry I didn't see your question in the chat. Thank you for asking it.